You're listening to the When Life Hands You Lennon's podcast.
But in an entry-level film production, it's one strike and you're out. You're fired. I'm not calling you back.
If your goal today is to make a basket, we're going to make that basket.
The minute you create something, as soon as it's made tangible, you have a copyright in it.
How do I get our guys to sound that big, that full when they do the harmonies?
And I'm your host, Lennon Seahawk. Let's get to the show. Hello and welcome to another episode of When Life Hands You Lennons. This is probably one of my favorite conversations I've had on the show so far. Story is an incredible musician. She's an incredible artist. She is just an all-around amazing person. And she has just an absolutely astounding story, pun intended, to her music. Why she does what she does is very inspiring. I came out of this interview just glowing and beaming and really thinking, because we really dug into like the philosophical why. We dug into why she does. She went to India and did yoga, and she had she learned all this stuff and took these experiences back. She was a former sex worker and had a very poor experience in her previous relationship. And she really manifests everything that she's learned and has done and puts it into her art, and it truly shows. She is just an absolutely outstanding artist, and I'm so excited to share this conversation with you because it's just incredible. So before I let you go and get into Story's conversation, and I let her tell her story, I want to remind you to please sign up to the mailing list, as it helps me notify you when new episodes like this are live. I'd also appreciate a 5-star rating and a review on Apple Podcasts, as it greatly helps the show be discovered and by new listeners and all that stuff. You can follow me on Instagram, just Lennon Seahawk on there. I post my daily life and stuff on there. I try to post more often than I typically do, than I have been, but you can keep up with me there. And lastly, if you or somebody you know would be a good guest for the show, there is a guest request form in the show notes below as well. So please fill that out and I will reach out if you're a good guest. So without further ado, let's dive in to my conversation with the incredibly talented Story. Cool. Well, let's just kind of jump in. First of all, Story, right?
Yes.
Perfect. Well, thanks for being on the show. I'm excited to chat with you and get to know a little bit about you and hear your, I'm sure, amazing story.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. So where are you coming to us from?
I live in Toronto. I was born and raised here, and I've been to Los Angeles a few times.
Okay.
But yeah, I'm based in Toronto.
Okay. And do you want to stay in Toronto? Do you have any plans to relocate?
Well, I was trying to come to the States, but they made it very difficult for me. So I'm actually considering moving to London, England for a little while.
Wow. And why London?
Mm-hmm. They just have a really great art scene out there, and it's very separate from what's happening in North America. So it's kind of a nice change, I think.
Yeah. And I've never been out there, but it's beautiful from what I've seen in pictures. And I would love to go out there. Mm-hmm. So tell me about yourself. Tell me about your music. Tell me about how you got into music. Have you always been a musician?
Yeah. So I've been singing since I could sing my ABCs into a microphone,
Mm-hmm.
It's been a part of my life forever. And I was studying all different kinds. Like I did my own studies. I taught myself how to sing, learning the greats like Celine Dion, Whitney Houston, Mariah Carey, and I was singing all the Disney songs. And then I got into Lauryn Hill and the Fugees, and then I was in a gospel choir. I was soloing, and then I started studying opera in university. And so I've dabbled in all different kinds of genres. And then I like met this producer and my whole world kind of turned around, and it was a very abusive relationship, and he coerced me into being a dancer, an exotic dancer, and took all my money, and it was a very like crazy time in my life. It was kind of a whirlwind, like, and during these kind of traumatic moments, oftentimes we have these like states of numbness and we don't really remember things clearly. And anyways, I got out of that after finding some autonomy. Like I started teaching myself how to drive. I started reading. Like he didn't let me read. I got a computer. He let me have a computer. I got social media, started reconnecting with my friends, and I realized I had some autonomy, and that's how I kind of got out of it.
How old were you at this time?
I was in my 20s.
20s? Okay.
Yeah. And like I met him when I was 19. So,
Okay.
you know, I was still quite young and fresh, and
Sure.
and then he I just managed to get away.
Yeah.
And then after that I went to India and I went to study yoga because I just couldn't live the way that I was living. Like I just needed a restart in a sense. My family and my friends, they didn't know anything about what had been going on. So I was kind of going through this by myself. I thought my family would disown me. My mother is Arabic. So like there's this kind of like, you know, it's shameful, like this kind of stuff. So I was afraid. And anyway, so I go to India, I studied yoga. And everything kind of just led me back to music. Like so my ex had taken all my music as well. He'd stolen all my hard drives. He stole everything. So I didn't even have an MP3 of my voice. I didn't want to continue music. I was going to become a yoga instructor. And I don't know, the universe just brought me back to music. It was like, basically, it was really this, like, there were many omens, but there was this one guy who said, listen, I had wanted to stay in India to volunteer indefinitely. And he was like, please go back to Canada and lock yourself in a room and do all your art, paint, write, sing, do whatever you need to do. And if after 1 year it doesn't go anywhere, then fine. But please, for the love of humankind, do your art and leave this volunteering shit to us normal people. You're not normal. You have a voice. And he pointed to my temple. And so that was a really pivotal moment. And I decided to come back to Canada. I started writing again. I recatalogued about 100 songs and trying to find producers, everything like that. And I just couldn't get my foot quite in the door. Like I had this, like an indie record label wanted to sign me, and then I had a major label, and then like just nothing was really aligning. And I couldn't get funding to get my project done the way that I wanted to. So I ended up producing and releasing my record on my own.
Wow.
So my debut album came out. That was in February of this year.
Congrats.
It was called Chapter 3, The Come Up, and it was about the parallels between the sex industry and the music industry, because I realized that there wasn't really as much of a difference as I was hoping there would be. And then not even 30 days after, COVID hit. And I was just about to fly to the Junos. I had been nominated for my first Juno award, and it's kind of like the Grammys in the States, but smaller. And the day that I was supposed to fly out was when they got canceled and the world shut down. So I was really depressed, and I created another album called Interlude 19, which I released on my birthday of this year. And so that's just kind of been my journey so far in a very, like, a super nutshell. Like, I can't express to you how much I've kind of left out. But so it's been a really amazing ride. I've learned a lot. I feel like a much stronger and wiser person. And I think it reflects in the music. I hope that it translates,
So tell us a little bit about the difference between the sex industry and the music industry, and why did you write an album about that? And like why, I mean, obviously it speaks to you on levels that maybe not many people can relate to or even speak to. But tell us some of those discrepancies. Give us, because I'm not very familiar with that industry. I know the music industry, but can
Mm.
fill us in a little bit.
Sure. So, I mean, it's just really exploitation of people,
Hmm.
right? Like you have, um, and the sexualization of people. So, like, I was in the sex industry and it was a very clear transaction. So, you go, okay, I'm going to give you a lap dance. It's $20. I get naked and you give me that $20 and the transaction is complete. You know what you're getting, you
Mm.
know, and you go to a strip club and you asked to get hired and they basically like they look at your documents, make sure you're the right age, if you kind of fit the bill for what they're looking for, you maybe do an audition on stage, you do some pole tricks, and if you're good then they let you work. In the music industry, I didn't find it as like cut and clear. Everybody still
Mm.
wanted to sleep with me and was making,
Mm.
sexual advances. And then when I wouldn't accept those sexual advances, I didn't get the jobs and I didn't get asked back into the studios and I didn't get the things that, like I
Sure.
I was definitely talented enough for,
Of course.
but but I didn't want to like repeat my exploitative life. So I
Yeah.
said no. And then those doors got shut and I had to do everything myself. And it gave me a much smaller platform. And the thing is like, if you sleep with somebody in the music industry, there's no clear agenda. You don't get $20 or a
Mm-mm.
record deal or whatever at the end of it. So I was like, at least when I'm at the strip club, I know what I'm going to get. You know
Mm.
what I mean? It's a
Sure.
very clear transaction. In the music industry, it's not as clear, and I didn't like that. I'm a very transparent person. Like, I'm like, this is what it is, this is who I am, that's it,
Mm.
And I didn't like that. So,
Yeah, that's very inspiring to hear that, and it's inspiring to hear that you stood up for yourself and you were able to say no and really kind of take a step back and put those people in their place and just kind of move forward. So you went out to India and you took on this thing. Why yoga? Do you have any other interests, or how come you went to India and went into yoga?
okay. So, I mean, I've always been into like health and in a natural way,
Sure.
like I really do love that sort of stuff,
Kind of like
like
a holistic approach.
exactly. I really do believe that health is like 50% mental,
Hmm.
30% diet, and 20%, activity, but
Hmm.
like it's 50% here, And I had actually never been to a yoga class. It was about, I would say, a month before I left my ex, and my cousin had invited me. And I was like, okay, like I'll go. I don't really want to go, but I'll go.
Hmm.
And it was the first day of a 21-day challenge. So I was like, okay, this is an omen. I have to do it for 21 days. So I did it. And after the third day, there was just something that the instructor had said. And she said, let go of the control you think you have over your life. And I started to cry and I didn't really understand because I was like, everybody was always telling me, take control of your life, get out of that situation, do what you need. You know what I mean? Like, take control of your career. And here she is telling me to let go of the control I think I have over my life.
Wow.
So I go and I had lunch after and I meditated on what she was saying and why it made me cry. And I realized that it was like that we are all connected. I saw the world as like a body and that we were all cells in a body, and we don't decide where we are in this body, like what kind of cell we're born as. If we're being pumped to the heart, we're going to be pumped. If we're a blood cell and we're being pumped to the heart, that's where we're going. We don't have a choice in that. But what do we have a choice in? It's whether we're a healthy, vibrating cell for the body or whether we're a cancer cell to the body. And either way, if we're a cancer cell, then we're killing the body that we live in. So now I just think of things not necessarily in like right or wrong, but like, am I being a healthy cell to the body? And that just really drew me to yoga. And then when I found out yoga originated in India about 2 months later, I just was like, okay, I'm going to go to India. And it's just kind of my personality. I'm kind of just like, I'm going to go to the source, go big or go home,
Sure.
if I'm going to learn something, I want to learn it from the right people. So
And you say omen a lot. What does that mean?
an omen is just kind of like a sign. And it's like, I really do believe in like a universal consciousness. So it's kind of a sign from the universal consciousness. I guess you could say this. I mean, some people call it God, some people call it Allah, whatever you want to call it. I
Sure.
call it a universal consciousness.
Okay. Yeah, I don't get into that a whole lot, but I find it very interesting when people do kind of attract to those things and they're kind of very spiritual and how they get through their life. Like you're explaining these things and like yoga and you went to the source. And I believe in the law of attraction. Where if you continually, like if you're attracted to something, whether that be buying a house or, putting out an album, you just continually think about it and you just put that energy out into the universe and it just like happens. You just somehow like subconsciously kind of set yourself up without really realizing it. And then all of a sudden you're buying that house or you're moving to wherever you need to move to, or you're putting out that dream song or that collaborating with that dream producer or songwriter. And it's just like, I've done it so many times where like, I really want something and it just happens. But I'm subconsciously working towards those things, but I don't really realize. It's a very interesting. I don't want to get too deep into it because we could talk about it all night.
I mean, but I think it's very similar to what I'm talking about in a sense. It's not really too different, know?
No.
Because you putting out that energy is affecting the other people around you. And that is like changing kind of the way things that are moving, in a sense.
Yeah, I mean, I maybe this would fall under an omen as well. Is like I get signs of things all the time. Like I'm meant to be where I'm at today for some reason. I don't know exactly what that's for just yet, but it's an omen. That's very interesting. So, what other things did you learn when you were in India? What other things did you take home?
Honestly, it was like too much.
I'm sure.
I was on a 3-month trip and I couch surfed across India. So couch surfing, like you stay in people's homes, you don't necessarily know them. I couldn't afford like a bunch of hotels for 3 months. So, and it's honestly now my favorite way of traveling because I really get to like delve into the culture. But the thing that's really interesting about India is like, a lot of people have like a love or hate relationship with it. A lot of people really don't like India when they traveled there, and a lot of people love it and are like, wow, it transformed my life. And one thing is that it really is a bombardment of the senses. So like there's just so much smells and sounds and colors and flavors. And so it's just like bombards all of your senses. And it forces you to really be present in the moment. You don't really have a chance to spend too much time in the back of your mind talking shit to yourself.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
that's interesting. So, I mean, you mentioned earlier how you keep like music has kind of brought you back. And you came out of that horrible situation and you didn't own anything. And music has that way. Like for me, I always tend to come back to music. So tell me what it is. I mean, you're an artist, but why music? What is it exactly and specifically that really draws you back to music? And what was kind of the omen, if you will, that made you like music is definitely something I need to pursue?
Well, I mean, I've always, since I was a kid, everybody was telling me I had a beautiful voice, so it just, I don't know. I just always remembered singing. It was always just a part of my life. And there was a lot of turmoil in my household growing up. So it was always something that I went to when I was feeling down, and I would just write songs and sing to myself sometimes, And then as I got, when I was in that relationship, music was kind of taken away from me, and I wasn't allowed to perform. I wasn't allowed to put out my music. Like I was really like in a box, And so that's how I ended up finding another art form, which is paintings. These are my paintings. And like,
beautiful.
Thank you. And I didn't, I don't know, I just needed an outlet and I started painting. And always, I kind of see myself not so much as a musician, but as a creative because
Sure.
I'm always kind of creating stuff. And that has always been my outlet. So, for instance, when I made my album, Chapter 3, The Come Up, I actually couldn't afford to get music videos done. So I just taught myself how to make the music video. So I directed a few of them. I edited a few of them. One of them was a clay animation. I animated it myself. I spent 4 months in my mother's basement doing this thing, So I've always just created, and it's always kind of come out of a place of desperation in a way. I wasn't a producer. I learned to produce because I had no other choice. And so for me, music has really been something that I just don't really have a choice but to do. It like comes out of me. I can't really help it. And I would love it to be like my full-time income. Right now, it's more of a part-time income, but I would love if art was my full-time income so I could just create all the time because I love it so much. And it really is my therapy. It's my way of like releasing everything in my life that has been positive or negative or whatever,
Absolutely. We all need those outlets. So is the painting directly behind you? It looks like a man or a woman with the shoe on her head or his head. Can you tell us a little bit about that one?
Yeah, so that's me. That's
Okay.
me getting stepped on. And it really is, it's self-explanatory, based on my life. So, yeah.
And is the one on the others looks like there's one maybe above your head? Is that yours
Yeah.
a painting too?
Yeah, it's also a self-portrait. I do a lot of self-portraits.
What
I was
other?
also like by myself for a long time. So
Sure.
like I was my own muse, I guess.
Okay. And what do you use to paint? Is it like watercolors? Is it
Oil.
oil? Okay. And
hmm
tell us about the process. Where do you get the inspiration to do that? How long does it take you?
So I started out, I did a self-portrait of myself. That was the first thing I did. And I had gone to the Art Gallery of Ontario for the first time. Just like maybe 6 months before I started painting. I went with my cousin. She wanted to check out the Jackson Pollock exhibit. And I don't know if you've seen any of Jackson Pollock's art, but it's basically like it's a lot of like splashes. It's very abstract, and they were just so grand. Like I'd never understood abstract art until I went to see them in person. And I was just like blown away by how beautiful they were. And so 6 months later, my cousin, she went to go pick up some art supplies. And I was like, I just went with her to like kind of follow her. And I was like, what does Jackson Pollock use? She's like, oils. I'm like, I think I want to get some oils and like try this out. And she's like, well, maybe try acrylic. They're a little bit easier to use. I was like, no, I want to use what Jackson Pollock uses. That's what I'm getting. So I get these oil paints, I put them under my bed. At the time, like my ex was making me work like every day. Like I didn't have a day off. So I had Easter off because the club was closed. So I took Easter and I decided to paint. And my first painting was of myself. And everybody was just like so blown away by the painting. And I was like, wow, maybe I have something here. So I had a guy at work. He was like, hey, can you paint my kids? And I was like, are you kidding? This is my first painting. But then I'm like, wait a second. He wants to pay me for a paint. Okay, I'm going to try.
Sure.
If it doesn't work, I don't have to sell it to him. Like I'm just going to try. So I painted it for his kids. He bought it from me for $1,800. I'm like, okay,
Wow.
yeah. Then like my fifth painting I sold to someone else for $7,000. And now I'm like,
Wow.
yo, I've made more money from art, like visual arts, than from music. This is crazy, right?
So how many paintings do you do in a year?
I don't do many,
No?
to be honest. Like I think I've done like 15 in my life so far.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's amazing. And how long does it take you?
Like this one here took me, I would say about 60 hours.
Okay.
Yeah.
And do you work on them like pretty consistently, or do you spend 3 hours and then take a break, or do you kind of like powwow through it?
I'm kind of like on stints, so I'll do like a good like 8 hours in a day and over like, I don't know, 2 weeks, but I don't really um like for instance, I just did a painting. I just got commissioned for a painting and I hadn't painted in 2 years
Wow.
prior to that, you know? So
Wow.
it's more like a therapy for me. I don't take it so seriously like how
Hmm.
I do music. Because for me, it's more like, it's not my real art. It's like my side art,
It's
you
like a
know?
side hustle. So you don't
Yeah.
have to, so you don't put that pressure on yourself
Yeah,
and you can
exactly.
enjoy it. Sure. I mean, that painting behind you is beautiful. I mean, I can barely draw a stick figure,
Oh,
let
come
alone
on. I believe
like,
everyone can paint. I believe everyone can sing. I believe everyone can do anything that they put their mind to. It just takes a little bit of patience.
yeah. I mean, I took art classes in high school. I don't like looking back at them. Some people just have an act for it though. Like, and you
Mm,
clearly do, and it's amazing.
thank you.
And like creative people who can paint and can sing and like that's very inspirational to me. So you had to learn everything yourself with your music. What instruments do you play?
I play a bit of piano and a bit of guitar.
Okay,
Yeah.
and are they self-taught?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Um, and you had to produce your own album, correct?
Yeah.
So tell us about that process. What did you have to learn? How did you learn it? And what kind of kept you going with it?
Right.
Because I'm
Well,
sure it was frustrating.
yeah, it was. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, I didn't get to the point or that I probably would have liked to get as a producer
Sure.
before putting it out, but I just didn't want to waste time.
Mm-hmm.
So, I did more of like a live band kind of
Mm.
production, and we just added sprinkles of stuff after. So I hired out three musicians. They came into the studio. I had 3 days in the studio to kind of get as much as I could with them for the 11 songs. And then I took it afterwards and kind of just like arranged certain things, added pads, whatever, brass. My brother does, he plays brass. So I had him arrange a couple brass sections for me for a couple of the songs. Um, and so it was a really great learning experience. And I got to really just understand how to put a project together,
Mm.
how to instruct instrumentalists on what I wanted them to do. So what I kind of did, because I only had 3 days, I like wrote down for each song all the references that I wanted, all the charts for the songs, the the sound qualities that I wanted for the guitar to have, or if I wanted an organ, or if I wanted, you know what I mean? Like I had to really just write everything down. So I had it all there. So I wasn't like, just trying this and that and whatever. And of course, like when you get in the studio, you have to be a little flexible because sometimes things don't work.
Mm-hmm.
But it was a great learning experience, and I definitely would do it differently if the next time I do it. I think Interlude 19 was a little different because I didn't have as much accessibility to people. We all did everything online.
Mm.
So I kind of had people send in stuff, and we'd have some little sessions sometimes over Skype. But I like actually found like different producers for each of the songs. I only produced two of them for this record. Or three of them. I don't know. Anyways, but yeah, so my friend Junia T, he is the one who produced like the three main singles off the record. And and yeah, so it's been fun, like not having to do everything on a project.
Yeah, especially an album, it gets to be a lot. So tell us how you selected the musicians, and what it's like kind of bringing somebody in and kind of taking maybe a different perspective on your art,
Mm.
because music can be very personal. So tell us what that's like and how you worked with different ideas that they had and implemented them.
Right. So, I mean, the first thing is that they were all my friends and I'd worked with them before. So I already knew that like they didn't have huge egos. I can tell them like if I didn't like something or I liked something or I want something changed. I trusted their musicianship as well. Um, and then another thing was like they trusted my musicianship. And for me, that was very new. So I remember with this first song with Junior T called For No One, he sent me a beat. And it's not the finished, what you hear now. He added stuff and moved things and arranged it differently. But he first sent me like kind of like a loop beat to write to. And I liked it. And I was like, yeah, this is the vibe, because I'd asked kind of people like the kind of vibe that I was going for this record. And so he sent me one and I wrote something to it and I said, do you want me to send you the idea that I have? So, before I go and record it, for real. And he's like, nah, fam, like everything you make is fire. I trust you. Just send me the vocals when they're done, And it was the first time that I'd had a man in the industry do that for me, give me the space to just be me and trust that I would bring the right thing to the song. And so it was great. And then him and I went into the studio afterwards and worked out the mixes and stuff. And yeah, it was just really lovely because I trusted them, they trusted me, and we both were able to take, constructive criticism. And that's what I think a great team does.
And I'm sure that made the project and process just so much easier, and makes it like I'm proud of this. Like you can look back and say I'm proud of this.
Exactly.
So tell us a little bit about your creative process. Like where do you draw inspiration from? How do you write your songs, your lyrics? Break that down for us a little bit.
Sure. So everything I write comes from life experience. I've almost written nothing that is not true to my life. So everything is quite personal. And so that makes it very easy for me because I can do a lot of free writing. That's what I generally do. So I don't really write structures of songs when I go in to write. So let's say I'm going to meet with my buddy Tom, who I wrote the entire Chapter 3 The Come Up album with. He's a classical pianist and composer. He's a brilliant man. And whenever I'd go see him, because he lives in another city, he lives in Montreal. So that's 6-hour drive for me.
Oh, wow.
And so I'd be like, okay, I'm going to meet him for a week. We're going to do some writing. And so I'd have a book of just like free writing, about different topics. And I'd have like an idea of like a feeling that I'm going for. Because if you listen to my albums, you'll see that they're kind of genreless. They go into different modes. I would say the overarching genre is probably R&B, but like it varies. So, I'd go in with that and then I'd be like, okay, so Tom, I have this feeling. I kind of look like a Frank Ocean, Novocaine vibe type thing, and then he would just start playing something. And then I would take those lyrics and I would just start singing to them. And then I'd have it like I'd record on my voice memos on my phone. And then we would just do like a bunch of takes of different ideas. And then after about, maybe 8 ideas that we'd run through, I'd go, okay, that's enough if I felt like we had some good stuff happening. And then we would re-listen and then we would kind of pick the ones that really spoke to us. And sometimes we'd know exactly when it was. Sometimes songs would just write themselves. It would be like the song Fuck Me Good on my album was entirely a jam. I did not change one word. I did not change one note. Like I just relearned what I did in the voice memo. And the same thing with A Lost Find. It was almost nothing was changed on that record from the voice memo. But sometimes, I take it and I'm like, okay, this is going to be the verse section. I need to fill in this line because I was just mumbling this over here. Now we need to come up with a chorus or we need to, you know what I mean? And then we would build it from there. So some songs take longer to build and some just write themselves. And so yeah, that's kind of my process. I would say for this album, Interlude 19, it was similar in the sense that people sent me stuff and I sieved through it and found the ones that I liked. And I I never listened to something without recording a voice memo and being in the space to be able to sing my first feelings to that rhythm, because I find my first guttural feeling of the music is what is the best take. And I think it's because, like, I truly believe that, like, life and this universal consciousness or whatever it is vibrations. All it is vibrations, and music is vibration. So you really just have to just be in line with the vibrations and it'll come out. And don't judge it. Like, I feel like so many artists, they judge their work too much. And it's like, you can't judge your own work. You have to just think of yourself as like antennae, like you're just transmitting this art, send it out to the world, and they can decide whether they like it or not, but it's not up to you to judge. And I think that holds back a lot of artists.
So how do you get past that for those who kind of self-judge and are very heavily critiquing themselves?
I just kind of close my eyes and press send. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, that's a good point.
Just go, okay, I'm pressing send now.
Yeah.
And then I just, you know what I mean? Like, sometimes you just have to just, I don't know, force yourself, because it's not easy. You can always come up with a reason to not do it, and it will be logical. It will. Your resistance will tell you everything you need to hear to not put out the damn thing. And I read this book by Stephen Pressfield, and it was called Do the Work. And basically it talks about resistance. It talks about it as if it were an actual being and what it like is made up of and what it thrives on. And the one good thing about resistance, he said, was that it is your North Star. So whatever you're resisting the most is the thing that you need to go to the most, because that's where you will see exponential growth. And so I always look for that thing that I'm the most scared of, and I go toward it until I conquer it.
That's very interesting. And now I need to sit back and reevaluate what I'm resisting.
What are you resisting?
I don't know yet. I think I need to sit back and really figure it out, because you got me thinking now. And I need to sit back and maybe just do like a free journal and just see what comes out and maybe cherry pick stuff from that.
Good.
That's very interesting.
I hope you send me an email when you figure it out.
I will. So you're working with your friend, is it Tom, you said, right?
Tom, yeah.
Tom, and
the pianist?
Yes. So does he help you do all the production, or does it go on to other people? Like, what are the next steps once you have everything, like kind of the groundwork laid out?
Yeah, him and I co-produced Chapter 3, The Come Up, and he helped co-produce a couple of the songs on the new album as well.
Okay.
He's not really a producer so much. His biggest like, it's not like he has like a library and all this like gear and stuff, you know. Sure. He's really more of a composer. Like, he'll write string arrangements or choral arrangements. He wrote a musical. He wrote a musical that was actually performed in New Orleans last year. Yeah, so like, he does that kind of stuff. But him and I don't know, I pull different stuff out of him, and so it's fun. So I have to know like where his limits are as far as that goes. And so, I need to find my drum and bass men, basically, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Absolutely. So after you're done, it's completely recorded, mastered, everything is ready to go. What's your kind of release platform? What do you do to kind of promote your music? And then I want to get into your animated video that you did. That's super interesting, and how that process worked.
Sure. So first question was
The like, what do you do after everything's mixed and mastered? Like, how do you market?
okay, got you. So I have a very difficult time. If anyone listening is into marketing and loves what I do, please contact me because I don't freaking know. Like
It's the
I try
hardest
to
part, I think.
It is super hard.
Yeah.
You need money. I don't have money, like I
Mhm.
have I'll have a couple $100 here to put on Facebook or something, but I don't know the best ways to do things and I'm only one person. So I really would love to continue building my team into people that can really know what to do. I did hire PR in Canada, and my PR agent she's amazing. She's done great work, but that doesn't help you get on playlists necessarily. That doesn't, that doesn't get you on radio. That doesn't get you on a lot of things. And so it's difficult. I would say it meant more about like 10 years ago because people actually read blogs and they cared and they were looking for new music in those spaces. People now don't really look for new music in those places. They're just looking for like, oh, Justin Bieber's face, Justin Timberlake's face, and they'll click on that. They're not really clicking on new people. And so it doesn't really up your numbers so much. So it's been a difficult ride. I don't really have a full answer. I've tried a few different things, and I'll usually put a few $100s into something and see, okay, did that work? And then kind of see the conversion rates and be like, okay, was this working? Was that working? Was this worth this money? And usually I haven't found anything to me that has been worth the money fully. So yeah, it's been a ride. I don't have the full on answer
Sure.
to that. I think, one thing I learned though was that numbers do lie. There's a lot of people who buy their numbers. There's a lot of things like, for instance, if you're on a label, right? Any label, even if it's a small label, often they'll have relationships with playlisters on Spotify. If you're on a Spotify playlist, like I remember getting on one Spotify playlist and having 6,000 listeners per month just from that playlist. And that was like not a huge playlist. So I thought about, those people who are on labels and then they release something and it's like, oh, 100,000 people listen to it on the first day. And it's like, it doesn't matter if they garnered it themselves with their fans. They just were able to get on this playlist that gets played by a bunch of people because it's a vibe, chill vibe or R&B vibes or whatever. And they're garnering these numbers. Meanwhile, like I'm here fucking busting my ass and like I'm getting 1,000 listens because that's just what it is. That's who I got right now. You know what I mean?
The power of the labels is unlimited.
Yeah. So it's like at first it was hard. And so I always like to tell indie artists, like, don't let that discourage you. It doesn't mean that you're not a good artist. It doesn't even mean that you're not better than some of these other artists. It just means that the numbers are a little bit rigged and that's okay. It can also swing in your favor at some point in time. I don't know how we can, you got to work the system a little, I guess. I don't know, network more, meet more people, make more relationships with people that
make
love
good
your
music. Continue making good music.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. And just be consistent.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Consistency. So I want to get into your animation project and tell us about that. What is it? And explain it. It's
Did you get to watch it?
I haven't watched it just yet.
Okay. So basically it's called Up. And it was actually in like over a dozen film festivals now. It's won a couple awards. And so I'm like super proud of it because for me, it really embodies me as an artist. Like I created the animations, which shows my visual artistry, and it's a film. So it's, it shows my directing and like kind of that sort of thing. And then And then obviously I wrote the song and I sang the song. So it just kind of, it feels like it embodies me as an artist. And it's also a commentary on consumerism in like our North American Western culture, you know. And so basically it's this codependent couple, and the girl watches this guy. So first he falls, and his arms, he's trying to like pick up a rock to, you know, show how strong he is to her, like they're in love, and he loses his arms and she puts them back on, and she's just like, I love you no matter what, you don't need to be super strong. But then he sees this potion and he drinks this potion to make him stronger, you know. And as he keeps going, he keeps seeing things and he keeps eating them. He keeps consuming them. So he eats a watch, he eats a, you know what I mean? Like he starts, and then he starts turning into this monster, and he grows bigger and bigger and bigger. And so it's basically, yeah, and it was inspired actually when I went to LA for 4 months, and I drove my car back, and I was just thinking about how we are so obsessed with more, and we're so obsessed with new, and what is new is always better. And what is deemed old, everything is like, things are getting old quicker than they ever were before. And old doesn't have value anymore. We don't even respect our elders. You know, they have so much wisdom. They've lived so much life. They've raised us. They've made us, you know, and sure, they have flaws. That's not the point. We all do, you know, but we don't respect aging. We don't respect older things. And we're always looking for the next best thing. We're always looking, our self-esteem is based on likes, or the car we drive, or the home we have, or who we know. And that's not what real self-worth is. And so it was really a commentary on all of that. And and I'm very passionate about this kind of stuff, because for me, I want people to live their best lives, and their best lives is, you know, yes, you can have the car and you can have the house, and that's great. That's the cherry on top. You don't need to not have that stuff to live a full life, you know, but you need to know that it's from here. So whether you have the house or the car, or whether you have a backpack and, you know, just a toothbrush and one outfit, you're still you, and you're still valuable.
That's a good
I'm still
message.
learning that. I still work on that all the time.
That's a hard concept to really learn and understand, because, like you said, consumerism, we are literally just beat to death every single day with the newest, the best insurance policy, the best car, the best house, the best security system, the best phone, the best Apple. I mean, Apple just had their event today with their new Apple Watch and their new iPad. You know, it's like the next best thing. It does this, and we're better than our competitors because we have this feature. It's the first, you know, it's just constantly bashed into our heads that this is always better. And technology, it does, you know, become antiquated fairly quickly, but it doesn't apply across the board. Humans don't necessarily get that way. And I love that message that you shared. Like, I've always shared a very profound respect for elders. One person that always comes to mind is, there's somebody back home when I had my lawn care business that I would mow her. She was an older lady, and every time I finished mowing her yard, she would have me come in and she would try to offer me a soda or a cake or something that she had just recently made, because she didn't, it's just something she loved doing. And I would sit down and talk to her, and it turns out she lived in Germany when Hitler was running. So she was sharing stories on how, like, when there was planes flying over, and I just got to learn. So, like, that's something that you don't get to see and hear very often, you know, like hear about somebody that actually lived through that. In a time that was so changing in human history. And it was just so interesting to hear those types of stories from her. But I love that message that you shared, and we don't cherish our elders like we used to, and we don't share. We're so focused on consumers and the newest best thing, and it's good to take a step back and really kind of value what it is, like ourselves and the people around us.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I mean, and I really like that you talked about how, you really valued those stories. And,
Absolutely.
my name is Story, and it's for a reason, and I believe that everybody has a story to tell, and that they have, and that everybody's story gives us a sliver and a perspective on the full truth. So the more stories we have, the closer we are to seeing reality for what it is. And it's really, so I wrote, so on interlude 19, all the names of the songs, they make a sentence, and it's death, don't wait for no one. So live a story worth telling.
Mm.
And it was kind of my motto when I got back from India. I realized that like life was so short.
Yes.
And, when I was living in this kind of depression and like so afraid to leave or to do something different in my life, afraid of my family disowning me or whatever the case is, I was holding myself back from living my life, from living life, period. And so I decided that it didn't matter. I didn't need to live only good things. I don't need to be afraid of the bad things. I just need to be afraid of not living. So I wanted to live a story worth telling, whether it's a good story or it's a supposed negative story,
Sure.
but it's all life, and it's all amazing, and it's all learning experiences. And it's really how you look at the thing. It's like, do I see this as the glass half empty or the glass half full? And either way you look at it, you're right.
Mhm.
Right? The glass is still half, it has this much water, but you can decide which way you spin the story. And so I think stories are so powerful. And I just want to live an awesome story.
Mm-hmm. I think that's very important too, because of all the stuff that's going on in the world and the racial injustices and politics, especially here in the States. It's crazy, and I've really taken a step back and listened to people's stories. I've seen people share their stories on Facebook or social media or YouTube or whatever it may be, and nobody lives the same life. Everybody has a different perspective. Everybody. And I think people need to take a step back. Instead of just assuming you're right all the time and this is the right way, this is how we should be doing things, this is not correct. Sure, maybe. But let's have an open mind and listen. Let's listen to our friends. Let's listen to those who have different experiences. Let's listen to those who lived in different cultures, from different races and different religions, and just hear what they have to say. Because that's going to open your mind, and humans are naturally inquisitive people. We want to know more. Why? And I think we can all learn a lot from that. And people sharing their stories. And that's why I love having this podcast. This is, I think, the 65th or something episode. So I've had a bunch of people who have amazing stories and come from all different walks of life in all kinds of parts of the world. And they all have something different to bring to the show. And it is amazing. It is amazing. And I've learned so much. And just this conversation alone, it's like the resistance and, the omen and the sharing your stories. Like it all comes full circle. And it's just so amazing. So going a little bit deeper, how some people are obviously a little hesitant to share their stories because it may be too personal, or maybe they don't think it's relevant. I'm an open book. I'll share whatever I want to share. I think I don't have anything to hide. So can you maybe share some maybe food for thought or some inspiration on how somebody can share their story truthfully, honestly, even though they may not think it's relevant or may struggle because of being like disowned, like you had mentioned, or maybe shut out from whomever?
Mm. Yeah, so I would say first and foremost, you have to love and forgive yourself for everything that you feel you've done wrong,
Mm.
and um, telling your story can be a way of like getting that out and really releasing that. Everybody's story is pertinent. As I said, like it's all slivers of the truth. All of
Mm.
our perspectives are relevant and they need to be heard. And no one person has the same story. So, regardless of whether people think they're like, oh, the story has been told so many times. You know how many people told me not to tell my story?
Mm.
And then Cardi B came out because they were like, oh, it's not going to work. You're like, people in the music industry, they're not going to get it. Cardi B comes out, she blows up. Then I'm like, so now I can tell my story, right? And they're like, no, but now it's told. Like somebody already talked about being a stripper, so you can't talk about it anymore. And I'm like, because Cardi B and me are the same person and we only need one story about strippers. Like,
And
what
they
is
all have the
happening?
same stories?
Exactly. I'm just
No.
like, what is going
What?
on?
Right.
So don't let anybody tell you that shit because they'll try, but
Mm-hmm.
don't listen to them. And I
Mm-hmm.
know it's hard, it is super hard because you feel like you're sometimes walking upstream, up a hill with a boulder, like
Everything's against you.
yeah, you feel like everything is against you. But you're inspiring somebody. So be the
Mm-hmm.
person that you wish you had around, like to help you, or be the change you want to see in the world. All those like kind of cliche
Sure.
sayings. But the reason they're cliches is because they're true,
They are.
Um, and then as far as like telling your story, just make sure you're telling your story in a safe place with people that you feel safe around.
Mm.
Um, I remember telling my story to some people who really tried to utilize it against me. I remember
Mm.
men fetishizing me and
Mm.
then wanting to sleep with me because they wanted to sleep with a stripper. And meanwhile, I was just like, help me. Like I had this horrible thing happen to me and I really just I just want to make music. And then they'd be
Mm.
like, oh, excellent. A vulnerable
That
woman.
that makes me sick. Like my stomach just dropped.
Yeah, it's horrible.
It's horrible.
It's horrible, but people are like that. So make sure you're in
And
a safe space when you're telling
yes,
your story. Make
good
sure there's
point.
people you love and that you trust. And then when you have a support system, if you want to tell your story to a bigger audience after that, then fine. But make sure that you're in a good place already mentally. Don't relive your trauma
Mm.
to the masses and for the first time and then have them backlash and then you feel like shit. Like
Mm.
you have to be solid in who you are. And if people talk shit about you, you have the support system and you have the mental health to not let it affect you. If that is going to affect you, do not send it out to people.
Mm.
Don't do it. They're
Mm.
not worth it
Mm.
because the world can be cruel. But I do believe that it also can really inspire. So if you do have the strength to tell your story, whatever it is, or however insignificant you think it might be, tell it because you're changing the world one
Mm.
person at a time.
Mm. There's always somebody out there that can relate and that will look up to you for sharing because they're in a similar situation.
Exactly.
And I always think sharing that story is important. I feel like you've just taken me to church for the last hour, and I feel like I'm preach. We're just missing the music and
Stop.
yeah, it's louder for the people in back, louder for the people in back. But yeah, this was such an amazing conversation. I'm so glad that you reached out and we connected. And
I'm
thank
so
you.
glad too.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing your art with us and your beautiful paintings and all of your creativity and your story.
With 2 R's.
With 2 R's. It was so great. So before we wrap things up, how can listeners follow you and keep up with you?
Yeah. So all of my social media is story with 2 R's music. So STORRY music. That's my Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Twitter. They can also find me story music with 2R's.com. You can sign up to my email list. I'm on Patreon as well, story music. And on Spotify, Apple, and all the streaming services at story with 2 R's. So STORRY.
Great. And I'll put a lot of those in the show notes below so people can easily reach out and connect with you if they have any questions or just keep up with you and follow you and your art.
Yeah, for sure. I'd love to hear from anyone. And if they have questions or whatever, they can always, email me, and I try my best to answer everyone. So
Sure. Well, thank you so much for your time this evening.
my
Again,
pleasure.
this
Thank
was
you.
this was great. I felt like I had a religious, what do you call it, revelation. I like getting into the kind of the philosophical stuff and really kind of digging to the root of why people do what they do. I think that inspires me to keep going. So I appreciate you sharing that with me tonight.
Yeah, thanks for listening, and thanks for asking the pertinent questions.
Of course, of course. Well, thank you so much. Take care and have a great rest of your evening, and we'll hopefully talk soon.
Yeah, I hope so too.
Bye.
Bye.